When the world abandoned gold, we thought money became free. Free from metal, free from limits, free for nations to print, spend, and grow. But what if that freedom was the illusion? What if hidden beneath the surface of global finance and empire still rules, not with armies or flags, but with debt, digits, and quiet influence? Because while gold died, control did not. And the ones who buried it built something far more powerful in its place. Pause tonight, we uncover the hidden empire controlling money long after gold died. Before the 20th century, money had weight. It was gold, or it was backed by it. A promise. One paper note, one piece of gold. 4 centuries, that link called the gold standard kept governments honest. They couldn't print more than their gold reserves allowed. If a country went to war or spent recklessly, the vaults emptied. Debt had consequences and power had limits. But in 1913, a quiet revolution began in America. Behind closed doors, on Jekyll Island, a group of bankers and politicians drafted a plan: the creation of the Federal Reserve, a central bank designed to stabilize the economy. But what it really did was create the first modern mechanism to control money without gold. For the first time, the United States had a private central bank, one that could issue currency, set interest rates, and lend to the government itself. Money was no longer anchored to metal. It was anchored to trust. Trust that the system would hold. And the world followed. After World War II, the United States emerged as the dominant power. The world needed a new financial order, something to rebuild trade, stabilize currencies, and rebuild nations. In 1944, 44 countries gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. There, a global system was born. The Bretton Woods Agreement. Every currency would be pegged to the US dollar, and the dollar, it would be backed by gold at $35 an ounce. It was a system that appeared solid, predictable, fair, and backed by America's strength. But behind the scenes, the foundation was already cracking. The US began printing more dollars than it had gold to support. Wars, welfare, and massive expansion were paid for not by gold, but by paper promises. Other countries noticed. By the late 1960s, nations like France began demanding their gold back. They didn't want US paper, they wanted the metal itself. And in August 1971, President Richard Nixon made the fateful announcement: the United States will suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. With those words, the gold standard died. Money was now pure trust. Fiat, created by decree, backed by nothing but faith. But in that death, something new was born. Once gold was gone, the old restraints vanished. Governments could now print, borrow, and spend without metal to limit them. The financial empire transformed from tangible wealth to invisible control. How? Through debt? Every dollar now came into existence through borrowing. When the US government issues bonds, the Federal Reserve buys them, creating new money from nothing. And those bonds, they become assets. Debt becomes wealth. In this new system, debt itself became the most profitable product in history. Central banks set the cost of money interest rates, controlling who prospers and who collapses. Global institutions like the IMF and World Bank extended this model worldwide, lending money to nations. In exchange for obedience, when poor countries couldn't repay, austerity followed: cuts to social programs, privatization of resources, and foreign control over domestic policy. Money was no longer about exchange, it was about power. And behind it all was the same structure: central banks, private financial institutions, and supranational lenders, the hidden empire of debt. In the decades after 1971, the global economy grew, but so did instability. The 1980s debt crisis crushed Latin America. The 1997 Asian financial crash exposed how isolated currency systems could be weaponized. The 2008 meltdown revealed the ultimate truth: the empire creates bubbles, profits from collapse, and rebuilds on the ruins. When the housing market collapsed, trillions vanished overnight. But instead of being punished, the same banks that caused the crash were bailed out. Central banks printed more money, slashed rates to zero, and bought toxic assets to save the system. But what really happened? They transferred private losses into public debt. Governments borrowed more. Central banks expanded balance sheets. In the real economy, the people carried the cost through inflation, stagnant wages, and soaring inequality. By 2020, global debt surpassed $300 trillion. For every dollar of growth, several dollars of new debt were created. This isn't capitalism. It's controlled dependency, a cycle that keeps nations, corporations, and individuals forever owing, forever paying. The empire didn't stop evolving. As gold disappeared, then cash began to vanish too. Today, we stand on the edge of the next transformation: central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Unlike cryptocurrencies that promise decentralization, CBDCs offer total control. Every transaction tracked, every purchase recorded. Every wallet programmable. Imagine money that can expire, be frozen, or restricted by policy. A digital leash disguised as convenience. And who controls it? It's the same central institutions now merging monetary power with data power. Meanwhile, inflation quietly erodes your savings. The cost of living rises faster than wages. Every crisis, whether pandemic or war, becomes a reason to print, borrow, and centralize more. The gold may be gone, but the empire's reach is greater than ever. Look closely, and the pattern repeats. Crisis. Something breaks. A crash. A conflict. A shortage. Reaction. The people panic. They demand solutions. Solution. Central authorities intervene, printing more money, expanding control, promising safety. And each time the system resets, not for your freedom, but for their stability. In 1971, gold was cut loose to save the dollar.